Hello and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Market Report for today, the 10th of December, 2025. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get started. So we thought we had peace, right? We thought we were on our path to the end of the Ukrainian-Russian war, right? Nope. The tracksuit midget makes a trip to 10 Downing Street, and the three amigos of European estrogen show up and tell him, nope, no, go back out there and demand that you still want Crimea back. Okay, whatever. The EU has been maneuvered, and Davos / the high table, whatever you want to call it, has been maneuvered into this moment of having to they've been maneuvered by Trump into this moment of having to come out completely for war. There cannot be any alternative. We must destroy the evil Russians, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to end. And this is the precursor for, American independence. You can't do this all at once. I keep making this point, and I think other people are finally starting to get it. I think Doomberg finally made a post or made a point about this in a recent podcast that somebody threw my way, that 90% of Congress would impeach Trump tomorrow for being creamsicle and Mussolini, right? And they just need a reason, and they just need an excuse, and they can get rid of him and move on. So he doesn't have a real majority. I keep talking about this all the time. I know you guys understand this. But what's important is that you understand this is ultimately why he can't, make the moves at, the drastic moves. Now, what's really funny is that our favorite Lalbert, Thomas Massey, is out there introducing a thing to, hey, let's get us out of NATO. Great. Sounds like he's right back on. No, see, he's not against MAGA. He wants to get us out of NATO, just like the Lalberts have always wanted us to get us out of NATO. Well, Trump's already set an agenda to get us out of NATO by 2027. So what Massey is doing is trying to, as always, take the timeline, bring the timeline forward, claim the issue was always his, and then claim that, we're politically effective, and the entire time undermining everything about what the administration's actually doing on a timeline that would be considered rational, right? You can't just have the United States pull out of NATO tomorrow, right? It's that whole Ron Paul thing. Just come home. Well, no, Ron, I'm sorry. No, you can't do that. It's not that simple. It sounds simple, but it's not. It's unrealistic. And it will create the kind of chaos that is not good for anybody. And we know that now because the European Union has come out with the threats through, little rumors that are out there. It never comes out through the Financial Times or Bloomberg. The big ones always come out through side channels, which is that they're willing to, dump their treasury bonds on the market. It always comes out, from the same kinds of people that, come out into the commentariat and say, China has all these treasury bonds, and that's a real vulnerability for the United States, and they could just dump their treasury bonds tomorrow, and that would just cause a complete fucking meltdown. Yeah. Okay. Why has China never done that? And then, because it would be catastrophic for China, right? But the Chinese could divest themselves somewhat of their treasury holdings over the course of 15 years. And somehow, every month that the numbers drop, we get an article on Zero Hedge and other places saying, see, the Chinese are divesting, it's the de-dollarization is happening. Yeah, but you never report on the months where it goes up. I've talked about this many times. The Chinese have been holding between 730 and 770 billion dollars worth of U.S. Treasury bonds in their official reserves for years, and they'll drop them lower when they need to, and when they're in intense negotiations with the United States over trade policy. Fine, it's a leverage point, but it's not a big leverage point. Now we have the European Union really making that threat, using outdated numbers too, by the way, because what they're trying to do is not define certain things, certain holdings as part of their official holdings, to downplay the entire idea. They own $4.128 trillion when mapped properly. It's not just the European Union. You have to add in Bank of Canada. You have to add in BVI. You have to add in the Caymans. You've got to add in, so many places. You could even honestly add in Hong Kong and Switzerland. Not Switzerland, Singapore. But I don't, right? Just to be, just not to make it like completely crazy. So, as I also think those are pivot points. Potential pivot point. So the Europe's getting their pug together. They're looking for they're spamming, looking for group, and saying, "Hey man, need 2 more for for a run through, Provrosk. Anybody? Bueller? Need tank and healer." Because they've got no, they don't have DPS. That's the problem. They don't even have tanks and healers. Because the what are the British going to do? Well, what are the French going to do? Maybe the French can show up. Without the United States providing logistical support, without the United States providing the entire package, right? None of these countries are going to be able to stand up to the Russians. Now, the United States under Trump can provide some of that access. And I'm sure that it'll cost anybody who wants to run, like, this is Trump. He's transactional. Like, yeah, you want to go to war? Fine. We're going to charge you for, satellite access, and whatever. Like, it's the reason we can't get out of NATO tomorrow is because you have to wind down operations. You have to let other people, you have to allow them, you have to allow us time to exit our commitments. You can't just walk away. It doesn't work that way. International relations just doesn't work that way. And everybody who argues from that perspective is an idiot. It's like my point about Robert Barnes knowing full well that it takes 9 months, that the grand jury process takes 6 to 9 months, right? It's like everybody screaming that Pam Bondi is a traitor because she doesn't have any district attorneys to actually bring cases against anybody. She's got all the evidence, but she can't do anything because the attorney general has been completely bound down by treasonous judges and a Senate that won't confirm any of the district attorneys. Like I said last week, everybody's screaming, "Oh, they're incompetent because they let Jim Comey walk." No, they're not incompetent. It highlights exactly what the problem is, and the messaging has been on point. We don't have any district attorneys because the Senate won't confirm any. You want these people arrested? Call Chuck Grassley's office. Chuck Grassley wants to stay in Congress until he's 114 years old? No. I'm sorry. At some point, you throw these guys down the stairs. Metaphorically speaking, in Minecraft. This is what you have to do. You play the MEQ, you do whatever you have to do. They're willing to throw our people down the freaking stairs, for Christ's sake. Whack them with lead pipes and all the rest of it. But we're not allowed to do that. Oh, that's inciting violence. Well, yeah, it is. I don't know. I'm at that point. I don't understand why we should be playing that game. We shouldn't be playing that game politically because we know that that's where this ends. But I guess that's what we're doing in Venezuela. That's what we're doing off the coast of Venezuela. And notice how everybody doesn't like it. Oh, well, you're fighting back? Well, that's illegal. Okay. And? Well, we'll force you to... Oh, no, you won't. You won't force us to do shit. So, this game is ending. Europe has to, organize their pug and stand up to the Russians, and the Russians are salivating at the opportunity to kill Brits and French troops on Ukrainian soil, where NATO doesn't apply, and they know this. Like, please send us your young boys. We will happily kill them. We would rather kill limeys and frogs than kill our Ukrainian brothers. Don't you get it? Oh, we get that. So, I don't know what else to tell you at this point, but when it comes to this, but they're going to war. I'm not sure I agree with Ian Burlingame about, they're raising armies in Europe, and they're raising an army in Canada to fight the United States. That's clearly obvious. They're arming Canada and rearming Europe through Canada on purpose, because they, are goading Trump into invading Canada. And at this point, I think Canadians would happily be invaded by the United States and all these people, thrown out. Like it's a funny game. Like I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. We're at the point where people are like, no, you can go faster. Oh, it's not legal. We don't care. Like, fix the problem. How we fix the problem? Sure. Is okay. Like, let's fix the problem. Like, they've created these rules. These rules are bullshit. And therefore, you don't fight on ground prepared by your enemy. You don't fight within the confines of the rules that are extra constitutional. You just say, look, Canada's arming. And and we know that their banks launder drug money, and we know that the drugs are coming across our border. You're hostile actors. You're engaged in, RICO activity with cartels. You are now, how shall I introduce you to the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth? So. And then we're into a South Park episode. The Canadians have bombed the Baldwins, But don't kid yourself. We're going to be at war with Canada in a year. I don't see how we can't be. We'll see what happens in that respect. But I don't think Trump's going to stand for any of this. And these people, and again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll reiterate it. The intelligence services and the media, and their, hangers on in the media, and their people on the, and their people on their payroll in Congress are going to play this game for for as long as they can. But there comes a point where they're not going to be able to, maintain this. Because when you're up against people who just want this fixed, and I don't think that we need a Caesar-like figure to emerge, right? That's the collapsitarian, that's the accelerationist argument. Trump doesn't need to play that game, but he can walk right up to the legality line and say, look, no, I have the right to blow up drug boats coming out of Venezuela. I have the right to do that. It's not that hard. I'm going to do it. Ooh, Congress was the one. Why doesn't Congress not want us to blow up? So then you have to ask. So this is the funny part about it. It's like, well, it's not legal. It's not this. It's wrong. It's right. No. Guys, why do you not want these drug boats blown up? Well, it's got to be done in a particular way. And no, it really doesn't. Why don't you want them blown up? Why? I'm worried about our soul. We don't have a soul. We gave that up ages ago. Now what? We're here to we're here to win and go home. Like, you want to like get angry with us for acting against the rules-based order? Really? Just because, like, Trump is ripping off the Band-Aid of plausible deniability about how the intelligence services act around the world to assassinate leaders and bomb currencies and run drugs and everything else that we've been doing, that every country's been doing for the past 100 years. And Trump's just like, you know what? No, we're just blowing those guys up. We're not fucking around anymore. Yeah, it's illegal. I don't care. Like, you want to go there? Let's go there. Here you go. We're blowing up your dudes. And the money's drying up. You can see it. Again, I noted it a little bit in the market report on Sunday, and I'm going to continue to highlight it as we sit here on FOMC day. And the entirety of the financial space is in a mildly, oh my God, I need dollars badly, deflationary, impulse. That's where we are. Like, it's cool. It's exactly where you want to be. You want to be at that moment where they have to screech and go, how are we going to get this money? How are we going to keep Ukraine going? It's not even just about Ukraine. Somebody else pointed out the other day that it's really not even about Ukraine. Like, they're putting forth loan guarantees about to steal the Russian foreign exchange reserves. They want the interest off that. They want to turn that into a cash flow stream. But somebody pointed out the other day, it's not their money. It's your money. Europeans in the audience are going to pay for this because you're going to lose in Ukraine. The loan guarantees are on the backs of the citizens. Ursula von der Leyen is pledging your children and your grandchildren's money to fight their war in Ukraine. That's what they're doing. By seizing money that the Russians are making. But the funny part about it is that we all talk about the $300 billion worth of Russian foreign exchange reserves that have been held in there. I mean, just because the money's been, frozen, I got to wonder how that money was invested when it was frozen. Be interesting to note whether or not were the Russians like holding it in like German bunds. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, I wonder what they actually were invested in. Because it would be really freaking funny if, like, the Russians had, standing orders. Okay, well, we can't have the money, but, it's still our money to invest. Like, we can't have it, but we can still tell you how to invest in it, right? I mean, to invest that money. I wonder if they've been sitting there, like, rolling gold forward contracts. That's what I would have done. Like, and that pile of money isn't $300 billion anymore. It's like $700 billion. Or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would have done with it. Because at a certain point, like, all they can do is freeze the money. Money can't move. But no one has any ability to. I don't know who has the ability to, manage that money. That money's being managed. It's not just sitting there collecting Fed funds. And maybe it is just sitting there in T-bills being rolled forward every month. But they keep talking about the interest on this money. It's been invested. And they don't have the right to direct that investment, right? They don't. The money is just sitting in Euroclear, in this place, in that place, in this bank, in that bank. And it's in all these different banks. And you have to ask yourself, like, how was that money invested? Who's making the decision? Because it certainly isn't. You know what I mean? Who's making the decision for the Russians? We've never asked that question, have we? It'd be funny if the Russians have like made $400 or $500 billion on their $300 billion worth of money that was been frozen, which is why the Europeans want it so goddamn bad. They want the cash flow off of it. And it's amazing. It's not like it. You know what I mean? Like, how much money could this possibly be? Right? Well, they're going to lever up the 3% that they make every year on this money. I mean, if it's invested in like, T-bills or whatever, what are they making on it? 3.5%? And it's scattered out all over the European Union. So it's not even the European Union controls all of it. We have some of it frozen, blah, blah, blah. And the whole argument that I hear about this thing, which I don't even believe, right, is, if you think about this one step further, why would, these reserves have importance, right? And they have strategic purposes. You'll read all the reporting on this. Well, the Europeans want it to be able to stabilize Ukraine and to pay back Ukraine and to pay back Ukraine. Bullshit. And for all the stuff that the Russians have bombed and destroyed. And the Americans don't want them to seize the money because the Americans want to use it as leverage in order to get the Russians to the peace table. I don't believe that at all. That's a bullshit justification. It sounds good, but it's a lie. I mean, vaguely they want it as leverage, as a talking point in order to get the Russians to the peace table. Yeah, we'll give you we'll unfreeze your money. But I don't think it's a big deal because I think the Russians are like, I don't give a shit. The money's already gone. Why do you think we're not stopping? Why do you think we're taking more of Ukraine? Why do you think we've knocked out power stations in Kiev? Why do you think we've done what we've done? Why do you think we take great glee in finding out where the British SAS and the French Special Forces and the advisors are and bomb them first? Because we do. Like, you don't kill people like Merz and von der Leyen and the rest of them because, well, you can't take out, their leaders, even though they're hated. Like, if Emmanuel Macron were to be, blown up tomorrow by the next time he goes to Kiev, which he never goes to Kiev anymore, because I'm sure that Putin's already told him, you set foot in Kiev, we're just going to nuke the friggin' room. We're just going to nuke the room. So they have to send the tracksuit midget to 10 Downing Street. Because the gloves will come off in that respect. Like, all those world leaders, they're all dead men if they walk into Ukraine at this point. Because why would the Russians hold back? These people have 12% approval ratings. No one wants this war to continue except them. So Putin would be doing the world a great service by just killing them all in Kiev. That's not advocating for violence, folks. That's just saying that's what's going to happen, right? Like, so what do we do? What are we arguing for here, right? But the whole idea that the Americans, want leverage to get Russia to come to the peace table is bullshit. It's nonsense. Like, because it frames the argument in such a way that the United States and the Europeans, both believe that they have the right to manage to futz with the Russians, fuck with the Russians' money, and that they're in agreement about using them. It's that somehow there's a conversation going on. There's no conversation going on between Trump and the European Union when it comes to the Russian money. That's a fantasy that the Europeans are putting out into the press in order to make it sound like they're still part of the negotiating process. They're not. They're completely frozen out of it, and they have to make a unilateral decision now as a group to sally forth onward Christian soldiers or non-Christian soldiers, as the case may be, and go kill Russians without the support of the Americans. And their only option is, if you don't come with us, we'll dump our treasury bonds. We'll dump your treasury bonds on the market. To do what? The reason you have those treasuries as reserves is because you've issued all the other crappy fucking debt. The only reason that the German Bund has any collateral value whatsoever is not the German economy. It's the fact that the European Union has shit tons of American fucking bonds in their reserves. Meanwhile, Italy's turning around and going, you know what? No, we want our 2,500 tons of gold. And it's ours. It's not the ECB's anymore. And the ECB's like, you can't do that. And they've actually responded to Italy stating that they want their reserves back, or that the reserves are the property of the people of Italy. I mean, the ECB actually had to respond to this. The fact that they actually responded and just didn't summarily ignore it tells you how weak their position actually is and how good the threat actually is. Because normally in times past, you would see something like that and they would just turn around and go, you know what? They would just not answer that. That's beneath us. But now they're having to respond to it. That's telling you they are in a very, very precarious position. And Maloney is the one with all the leverage. So, how does that all fit in with the Fed today? Obviously, I think Powell's going to cut rates today. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't. We got an almost normal yield curve. He cuts by 25 basis points. He'll have a properly upsloping yield curve. Wouldn't that be nice? He will have navigated that very, very well, I might add. So, and then all of this is happening against the backdrop of the Supreme Court taking oral arguments against the Humphreys executor, which is that whole truly disgusting argument and decision that gave Congress the ability to create commissions that could get, unelected commissions that could then be stabbed by the managerial state and be outside the purview of the president and our Congress. I mean, are we kidding here? The CFTC, the SEC, all these people are commissioners that we don't have nobody has any fucking control over these people. All of that has to go away. And listening to the arguments on this, it's hilarious. Shamiqua Auto Pen Brown, literally proved to everybody she's just an idiot and literally no better than, Judge Boasberg, that fucking piece of shit. At the end of the day, it's all just a big goddamn grift. It's all just sand in the fucking Vaseline, for Christ's sake. It's all it is, over and over and over again, masquerading as, taking the moral high ground and fighting against fascism and saving our democracy, and fuck off. I have gotten to the point now where I cannot understand, right, how we have spent how long over the last 30 years people wrapping themselves in the fucking Constitution. And I'm talking now, Ron Paul, everyone. And they all sat there and did nothing but excoriate the fucking president the entire time. Excoriated Congress for ceding their power to the president to make him into a king. And they made these arguments for years. Go back and read the archives at Lew Rockwell. Go back and read the Mises Institute shit. Go back and read all of that crap. And never once did we turn the table on it and say, and the executive ceded a lot of his executive power, Article 2 constitutional powers, back to Congress or to the unelected fourth branch of government. It was, a little bit here and there, but nothing like what they've talked about vis-a-vis Congress, the transfer of power in the other direction. I was like, this whole Tom DiLorenzo's whole fucking shtick. And while it's at that level, it's kind of true, but it's far more true in the opposite direction. And this is what we're watching the Supreme Court do right now, which is to literally remind everybody that the Article 2 powers of the president are far greater than anything anyone really thought. And that's the reality of the situation. And that's the American system. And if Congress wants that power back, well, they should take it back. But what we found is that they never really ceded that much power to the president. Only the big ones like, the War Powers Act and a couple other stupid little things. And they harped on this shit for years. It was all bullshit. The whole point was to bind down the president because the president was more powerful than the British wanted our president to be. They didn't want that. They were trying to create an executive that was bound down. They argued for it. What's really funny when you stop to think about it, I remember listening to a commentary about, and this is, in my early studies of Putin and Russia, like for the most part, we're the ones who drafted the Russian Constitution, gave the Russian Federation's Constitution, giving the president unbelievable levels of power. Because the West believed that they were going to be able to control the president and therefore control Russia by having this unbelievably powerful executive. And then, of course, Putin comes to power, and then they call him an autocrat, right? Typical. And then they continue on talking about Putin as an autocrat after he's devolved some of the excessive power that the president of Russia has, that was handed to him by Russia's enemies, which he then turned into an asset for Russia. And now he's devolved some of that power back to the Duma and the Security Council and other places in order to safeguard those things, safeguard those abilities, those powers within the Russian political system, such that when he leaves power, Russia's protected. And they call him an autocrat for it. Fascinating. You got to think about this stuff in this way. You got to do that level of work. When you realize that's what you're dealing with, when you realize that that's the game, like, everything makes a lot of sense. And so that's where we are. We've created, we're watching we're watching the end of a political movement that was never going to be anything other than an oppositional thing. And I got into it with a guy this morning on Twitter, and Captain and Capistan, whatever his fucking name is on Twitter, it was hilarious. And somebody's like, "No, dude, you need to listen to Tom. It's not that simple." And I'm like, "No, he's not gonna." I just popped in and said, "He's not gonna listen. He's a Trotskyite. He doesn't listen. They don't listen. Why do people who are convinced they're right about everything don't listen to other people?" Right? So and you can't argue with people who are convinced of their moral certitude. And in that respect, these people are Trotskyites. There's no functional difference other than the positions or the rationalization for the positions that they're taking, that maximalist position that they're taking. That's the point. That's the essence of being a Trotskyite. Permanent revolution. Nothing's ever good enough. Trump sets a timeline to get out of NATO by 2027. Not good enough for Thomas Massie. Got to be done tomorrow. It's not good enough. Just arrest somebody, for God's sakes. Sound familiar? Just end the Fed tomorrow. Everything will be better. Okay. That's the world that they operate in. And how is that any fucking different in practical terms? How is that any fucking different than Ilhan Omar? Gold continues to coil this week. And I know that rant gets a little tiresome after a while, but you have to realize it's so very fucking important. It is an unbelievably important. If you're going to save your civilization, you cannot listen to accelerationist forces on either side of the spectrum. And you have to see the bullshit for what it is so that you can make rational decisions going forward. This is why so this is why we look at the markets as well, right? So because the markets are telling us we have them on the ropes. These people are squawking in a way that I've never seen them before, seen them do. And I'm like, well, this is a lot of fun. So, let's continue putting the pressure on and marginalizing all of these people. It's important because what they're doing now, is where we're headed. I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to think about an insight I had this morning. Well, I'll get there in a minute. So at this point, gold is looks like it's going to coil into the end of the year, and I don't think we're going to get a big move before the end of the year. And I think that would probably be best because now that if you digest 4,000 as the new price for an ounce of gold, while silver keeps doing its thing, you're setting up for a really interesting 2026, right? So, like this, I love this pattern, right? And then I love what I'm seeing here, which is that there's no potential for gold to, where's gold going to go? Is it going to drop to $3,600 because I can't make it to 45? Really? High, low, lower high, higher lows everywhere. No, never breaking the previous week's low. Even, this bar is so very powerful. So, also on the silver front, and as we push the silver, and silver's over $60 an ounce, on the silver front, I've noticed and we were just chatting about this morning on Slack. It was a really good insight by a member of the community. About that, I'm seeing a concerted effort to argue against J.P. Morgan. And to gin up negative commentary about J.P. Morgan from every angle. Oh, they're moving their gold desk to Singapore. They lit up the building in New York and the British flag. They're the ones sitting on the price of silver. If silver closes above $60, they're fucked. And I've seen everything. It's everywhere. And when you see a concentration of that across multiple vectors, there's an operation being run. Okay. Someone's spending a lot of money somebody's got a big post-boosting budget on X, and they're trying to create a thing, right? People are being activated because Morgan, and the more I see this, the more I come down on the side of Morgan is taking control of the Singapore gold trade on behalf of the United States, kicking London out. That's a big. When that was announced, I was like, it could go either way. I'll be willing to. Okay, no, you have. The more I hear the histrionics about how J.P. Morgan is fucked, the more I, the debanking scandal, the this, the that, all this rotten nonsense. And then Jamie Dimon goes out on either Maria Bartiromo or CNBC is like, What about all this? People just need to grow the fuck up. I'm like, holy shit. Like, go for it. They know they have to go after Diamond. Because Diamond is the one at the end of his career setting up the succession at Morgan, at JP Morgan Chase. And a lot of the people who were there in the organization during the years when, Morgan was doing a lot of the hinky shit that, they rightfully deserve opprobrium for in the past. Those people are all being cut out of the line of succession. And so we know that, behind the scenes, London and company have to be screaming about the fact that they are not going to have any control over JP Morgan Chase going forward. And Morgan is making inroads in every aspect of the gold and silver trade in order to control the gold and silver trade, which is a key to the future for everybody, right? So, creating this fiction that JP Morgan is somehow the company that's on the hook for going bankrupt if silver goes to $65 an ounce. That's just bullshit. I've heard this story 1,000 times. I've been following the silver market for 25 years, and if I had a fucking dollar for every time I heard somebody say, if silver gets above X, JP Morgan is going to be, destroyed, and invested that money in T-bills, I'd be a fucking millionaire. Even during the zero bound years. Taking that into account. So it's like, I'm tired of listening to, oh my God, JP Morgan's going to get killed in the silver market. Just like I'm getting tired of listening to people talk about how, the end of the yen carry trade means that, Japan is going to explode or whatever. I mean, I've heard this 1,000 times and I'm not interested anymore. Give me something more to work with. That's what I want. So I don't buy it. You know what I buy? That Morgan is managing the upside here. And very well. And someone else is getting fucked. And since Morgan is the arbiter of who gets any kind of large settlement in physical silver, if they're short, who has the power? It goes exactly back to what Vince and I talked about when we first started, when we first began chatting about, separating the silver futures function from the currency hedging function, right? That whole, when it was first announced that JP Morgan would become the sole trusted custodian for GLD and SLV here in the United States. And, Vince started talking about, the return of mercantilism. We don't want the physical gold to flow around. We just want people to be able to speculate on it. And any physical gold or silver that moves is going to have to go through the trusted intermediary. And there's going to have to be official somebody allowing JP Morgan to release that gold. To release that gold to go where it needs to go, right? Well, then you connect that dot with the story last week or 2 weeks ago when, silver was spiking, and then all of a sudden, JP Morgan somebody settled up a large amount of gold, physical gold, and JP Morgan moved the, amount of gold from, available to allocated or whatever the hell the eligible to allocated. And that created and that calmed the market down. That was a negotiated settlement. Do you think Morgan just made that trade because, they were short? No, Morgan made that trade because they were told by Scott Besson, I got what I wanted in some other area of the market. Send the silver over, credit it to whoever needs it. We're good. We have already had our first instance of that being the case, of Morgan being that part of the market. And now they're moving to Singapore? That's interesting. And there's this massive campaign against Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan. Yeah, and and Trump plays along a little bit too. Sure, why not? I would, especially to run cover. I would. Bitcoin. I'm getting to why this is all going to be tied to Fannie and Freddie in the bond market in just a minute. Bitcoin looks good and solid. There's a last night it got out of control above 92 grand for about an hour, and then London, I think it was probably London, came in and tried to deal with it. I'm firmly convinced at this point that there are people having to try and hold Bitcoin down in order to get into the end of the year for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is they need the money. And I'm okay with that. Bitcoin's still on sale. Not much else to say. Would like to see a move above that high right there. But I like the fact that, at least so far this week, broke the previous high, didn't break the previous low. Let's go with that. Baby steps. After this kind of move, baby steps. Brent crude. If reports are correct that we're getting ready that we're starting to see a revolution in shale, I wouldn't say technology, but application or operations. I watched a video the other day about this, and it's interesting that we're moving away from traditional frac sand, and now we're using coking waste or refinery waste, which is finer, harder, and stronger as the frac sand in our fracking wells. If that's actually if that's actually gaining market share in the fracking space, that's going to increase yields, because fracking is all about, the more finely that you can blow apart the rock that's got the oil trapped in it, the more you can pulverize that rock, the more oil you're going to get out of it. The more oil, natural gas liquids you're going to get out of it. It's just that simple. But you need particular materials to go in there and blow that rock open and then keep it held open. And that's what traditional frac sand was always about. And, there's been iterations on that. I've tried to make money in frac sand years ago. It didn't work. So it's a side of the story that I haven't talked about in an awfully long time, but it's something I do know. And I don't focus on it anymore because it's not germane to the way we've structured our portfolio and the commentary and everything else. But it is important now that we're watching American production rise, inventories are rising. And if we have this on the horizon where new wells are going to be 25, anywhere from 15 to 25% more efficient, then we can expect better results going forward. We can expect, domestic oil production to continue rising, profit margins to go up, and the price of oil to go down. So you don't want to, I don't know that you clearly don't want to be bullish oil right now, but you may still be able to be bullish, oil majors, oil field services, the industry itself, because of the mix between deregulation, lower cost of capital, and better technology, cheaper, better technology that will lower, cost per barrel. Well, hey, you can have $45 a barrel oil and everybody's making $20. Wouldn't that be interesting? Right? It's not what we have today, but there we are. Patron request hour. We got two of them this morning. Ignore the title. I forgot to change it. First one is this State Street Home Builders ETF. This is a messy bottom, is all I really wanted to note here. But this is clearly an uptrend. We hit a big high in the summer of 2024. And then, you know, then the economy really hit the proper inflationary recession that we're in now, or that we're I think beginning to come out of. But this is a messy bottom, right? Down, attempted reversal signal, fail, and then it still didn't even close above the high of this bar. So it took a while, and that sets up the fact that you're just, there's a lot of energy lost here. That this rally was not going to get to the new high, but now it's breaking off to this low in the $100 range. And so what I would say is, much like oil, kind of breaking off to the asymptote kind of behavior, decaying function that way. If that's the case, then we're seeing, let's, make it simple: low, high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Okay, that trend is over. Low, lower high, higher low, coiling, waiting for the economy to take off. It looks to me like, that's what this is saying. I think the market is betting on the Fannie and Freddie IPO. Because here's the thing that I was thinking about, and I'm going to pop open gold versus Bitcoin here as well. With Fannie and Freddie, something that we haven't talked about. We've talked about every other aspect of the Fannie and Freddie thing, except the one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that Fannie and Freddie have the ability, and they did for years, for decades, to help control the long end of the yield curve. In the United States, they could go into the market and buy and sell treasuries and buy and sell mortgage-backed securities in order to affect the long end of the yield curve. We haven't had that since 2008, right? Fannie and Freddie have been on conservatorship. They can't make a market like that. They're not in there helping interest rates, cushioning interest rates. In effect, if Fannie and Freddie are the pooled capital, or the source of the pooled risk of the entire American economy, that we had an advocate for the entire U.S. economy, effectively, think about it this way, to make a market in interest rates. It's a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful tool for Americans. In effect, Fannie and Freddie are the proxy for the desire of Americans to buy and sell, to buy homes and to buy mortgages and build businesses and everything else, and to decide on what the long-term cost of capital is going to be. It's like they're the brain of the American hive mind of what the long-term interest rate needs to be for us to operate in the world that we want to live in. It's like, what are interest rates? Interest rates are the price you pay for money in order to forego the use of that money in the immediate term. I'm foregoing the use of this money for X amount of time, and I'm lending it to you, and therefore you're going to pay me a rate of return on that money. And that rate of return is the desire, right? Well, if you think of it that way, which is a very Austrian way of looking at it, then creating a mechanism that aggregates the collective, I don't know, in a Jungian sense, kind of the collective unconscious of what we think the cost of capital should be in order for us to buy a home, and make the trade-off between paying off the debt against our home today and using the cash flow from that to, do some other thing, because that's what you're doing, right? That's you're gauging opportunity cost, right? Well, if you're the evil people who hate fucking America and want to destroy it, don't you think you need to take that mechanism away from them? I've been trying to answer the question, why are they so goddamn committed to keeping Fannie and Freddie in conservatorship? Why have they worked so fucking hard at this? It's been a question that's been bothering me for, honestly, for like 2.5 years, right? So I first started sitting down and talking with people behind the scenes about what's going on with Fannie and Freddie. Like I brought it all to y'all at the beginning of the year, but that was after 1.5 years of me trying to wrap my brain around the whole thing, because it was completely off my radar and I didn't understand, at all. And so I needed to work through a lot of that stuff before I even just thought about presenting any of that to you. And now, and all year long, I've been sitting here trying to figure out why Obama works so fucking hard, why the British fucking hate the 30-year mortgage so goddamn much. And it's that. It's Fannie and Freddie's ability to manipulate, but to reflect the needs of Americans in the cost of capital on the long end of the yield curve. The Federal Reserve controls the short end of the yield curve. They want control of the entire yield curve. They can do nothing but yield curve control all day fucking long, these people. And so that's why they've been going on a fucking buying spree to buy all our 10s and 30s and then use them as fucking weapons against us. They don't want us to be able to control long-term interest rates. They want to control our long-term interest rates. That's their counter move against SOFR. That's why that's so important. That's why Fannie and Freddie have to come out of receivership or conservatorship. That's why they have to be, relisted and made whole. Not just because it was wrong that they were stolen from us in the first place, but because that's what they will actually begin to perform in a market function. So it will blunt their attempt to use our foreign-held U.S. Treasury debt as a weapon against us. They will have been exposed because now Fannie and Freddie get to be part of the mechanism by which to create sinks for that selling. Everything that everybody talks about, all the fucking dollar bears, all of the America bears, all the America haters, all of these fucking people from Peter Schiff on fucking down. Every goddamn one of them argues the same thing over and over again. The dollar is trash and they're going to sell our fucking debt and then we're not going to be able to function anymore. I'm like, the United States is the most dynamic economy in the fucking world, for Christ's sake, with 107% debt to GDP ratio, and we haven't imploded. And there's And why are we going to implode when we're looking at fucking Japan with 220% debt to GDP ratio and they haven't imploded yet? The cognitive dissonance of these fucking people is off the fucking charts. When you actually start to break down their arguments, they are all and every one of them, to a word, non-fucking sensical. That's why why do you think they don't want to see us get control of our bond markets and the price of the dollar and gold and Bitcoin and all the rest of it? They all fucking know that the way out of this is to revalue all of that shit, revalue the collateral, and then watch the whole thing take off again. And in the process recapitalize the middle class and have the middle class cash flow actually be the thing that they have to fight against. The recapitalization of the middle class translates into Fannie and Freddie's ability to control the long end of the yield curve, which they don't have any fucking control over anymore, which is what they desperately want. You put fucking Hassett in charge of the friggin' Federal Reserve, and they've already lost. Why do you think they have to take us to World War Goddamn III? They have to stop this from happening. And I do believe that the Trump administration understands this now as well as I do. I think they've always understood it. You wouldn't have been implemented SOFR if you didn't think that this was the end game. I'm fucking 8 years late to the party. What about everybody else? Everybody else is still trapped in the matrix. Gold to Bitcoin ratio looks really, really interesting because clearly there's a bottom, long-term bottom at the 0.025 level of, 0.025 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. We have now moved up towards the 0.05 level, which is also a potential, it's just clearly now a resistance level. I don't know what to talk. I don't know what to make of this. I was asked to look at this. I don't know what to make of this because what are you saying? You think Bitcoin's going to stay at 90 grand and gold's going to go to 8,000? Do you think Bitcoin's going to go to 180,000? But then where does gold go? 15? Do you think it's going to, if this is about to break out, right? I mean, let's talk about what there will be a movement, right? Because markets don't not move, right? They don't just establish a new zone and lay there. So is the real zone of value of the ratio of gold to Bitcoin 0.025 versus 0.05, or is it 0.1? If it's 0.1, then gold going to $8,000 an ounce or $8,500 an ounce, and Bitcoin's not moving. Or gold's going to $15,000 an ounce, and Bitcoin's going to 180 to 2,000. This is only a 5-year chart, folks. Not even a 3.5-year chart. All right? Do the math. So I don't know what to make of this. But if this resistance level falls, what are we looking at? 0.075? Is gold going to outperform Bitcoin by, 33%? That would be interesting. I don't know if this is tradable or not. I would say that if you are trying to decide whether you should buy gold or Bitcoin right now, I would argue right now, I'd argue that you want to be, more long Bitcoin than you are long gold, if you believe in both. Right? It's kind of the silver to gold ratio argument that I always make when it's, when I put the silver to gold ratio up and I say when you're below the line, you buy more, more gold and silver. And when it's above the line, you buy more silver than gold. Well, we're at a interesting resistance level on the gold to Bitcoin ratio. So gold's rallied and Bitcoin's been shellacked. So what should you be buying more of? Well, I don't know. One looks like it's ready to pop out to a much higher price, gold, and the other one looks like it's going to have to slog its way back to its recent highs. So here we are. It's FOMC day, and now the U.S. yield curve is flat, almost completely flat out to 2 years, maybe even 3 years, trading within 7 basis points of flat all the way out to the 3-year mark. You don't think the Fed can't cut by 25 basis points here and create a nice upwardly sloping yield curve? We're getting more and more of the effect that we saw I noted the other day, which is that the long end of the curve is being sold more rapidly, and it's not being converted into short-term treasuries. They're just selling across the entire space because they need money. Holy shit, we need dollars. And we're just seeing even more of it. Meanwhile, we hit a low of $1.32 or 1.3% on the U.S.-German 10-year spread the other day. Lagarde has moved that back. I didn't update this. This is 70 basis points. Everything else has been updated. 210 spread is now set almost 58 basis points. This is the Fannie and Freddie thing. Powell cuts by 25. We watched the 210 spread move out to 75 or 80 basis points. That's good. That's good lending numbers for the banks, right? Copper is $5.35 a pound. Gasoline prices are crashing because of deregulation. And then, again, if I want to, you want to get rid of Chuck Grassley, just, threaten the RIN system tomorrow. Because his whole shtick is, protecting the quote unquote corn subsidies. So, and the 10-year Japanese bond is now going to move towards 2%. Nothing's really changing in here. All this stuff is just moving around. And, someone is trying to push the SOFR futures curve to say that, the Fed is done cutting rates. The SOFR futures curve, the long end of it there's been an attack on the long end of the curve in the last few days. I just don't buy it. And it's, anybody who is trading the SOFR futures curve based on the bullshit economic statistics at this point and not thinking about global capital flow and how to bias global capital flow, they're out of their minds. The statistics mean nothing. I mean, to be honest with you, the best thing, I was saying this, I think I was saying it might have been yesterday morning when I was doing my Newsmax one. I said, the best thing the Trump administration could do right now is to shut down all American economic statistics coming from the government. And until you're like root out all the bad data, all the spreadsheets, all the traders, all the rest of it, just get rid of it all. Force the market, force all these market analysts, all these insouciant and wise fucking people, and the hedge fund traders and everybody else, force them all to actually do their own goddamn checks on how good the economy is doing, as opposed to falling back on bullshit government statistics. Actually do the channel checks, folks. Actually do your goddamn jobs. I'd love to see that. I'd love to break the CNBC, Bloomberg, Matrix, constant British news cycle of, the new numbers came out this morning, and they just talk about the numbers for 4 hours, and they suck everybody into talking about fake numbers. How about you don't have any numbers to talk about? Now all of a sudden Joe Kernan's got nothing to talk about. Now all of a sudden, Mike Bloomberg doesn't have a fucking business model anymore. You want to break these fucking people? Stop reporting the fucking numbers. Force the fucking investor class to go out and actually do diligence. Watch how much all of this shit, all the valuation models change tomorrow. Everybody would stop running their dumb pair trades. Because all we're really seeing right now is a bunch of dollars sloshing around the world trying to figure out where to go. That's all we're seeing. When I was looking at the performance of the equities for this month, I'm like, how is the DAX outperforming the Dow? How are any of these? Look at this bullshit. It's all coordinated. You look at it and you're like, it's not that anything is trading on fundamentals. Anything is trading on valuations. No one's trading on anything other than the fact that there's just money floating around. It all has to go somewhere. So the best thing to do is to drain that money from the system, and then find out what people really believe. So do you really believe that Tesla's worth 500 times earnings? More power to you. Okay. Meanwhile, the Dow quietly consolidates, pushes up against 48,000. But that money's going to go somewhere once we get out of this holding pattern. Someone is desperate to hold these markets in abeyance while at the same time trying to blow open and they're waiting for the political capitalists in order to catalyst in order to start putting money on the table. No one, ultimately what I'm thinking right now is that no one knows what to do right now because everything is balanced on a knife edge. Maybe that's all I really had to say to start out with. Maybe that's what this should have been. Welcome to the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns Market Report. No one knows what the fuck to do. You guys, be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your slick on the ice.